Emily Carter, silence was all she had. The apartment felt empty. Not because the furniture was gone, but because the life she once believed in had quietly collapsed. Just 3 weeks ago, she had signed the divorce papers from Daniel Whitmore, the billionaire tech investor whose name dominated headlines, magazines, and boardrooms across America. To the world, Daniel Whitmore was untouchable. To Emily, he was the man who walked away without ever looking back. She stood alone in the bathroom that morning, the soft hum of the city drifting through the window. Her hands trembled as she stared at the small, white stick resting on the counter. 2 lines. Clear, undeniable, positive. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "This can't be happening," she whispered. She pressed her palm against her stomach, a mix of fear and disbelief flooding her chest. The timing felt cruel, almost calculated by fate itself. Divorced, alone, and now pregnant. Daniel didn't know, and she had no intention of telling him. Not after the way he ended things. Not after the cold silence. Not after he chose his empire over their marriage. Emily wrapped the pregnancy test in tissue paper, hiding it deep inside the trash as if burying the truth could make it disappear. But some secrets refused to stay hidden. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that destiny had already set its plan in motion. Because in less than 48 hours, Daniel Whitmore would discover the test. And when he did, everything would change. No one tells you how loud silence becomes after a divorce. For Emily Carter, silence was not just the absence of sound. It was the echo of a life she thought she had, now slipping away like sand through her fingers. The apartment she once shared with Daniel Whitmore, the billionaire tech mogul whose name was on every magazine cover, now felt like a museum of memories she never wanted to keep. The walls, once painted with laughter and love, now seemed to close in on her. She ran her fingers over the counter in the kitchen, lingering on the spots where coffee mugs once sat. Even the sunlight streaming through the window seemed harsh, exposing every empty corner. 3 weeks ago, she had signed the divorce papers. 3 weeks ago, the man she once loved walked away without looking back. To the world, Daniel Whitmore was untouchable, powerful, and unstoppable. To Emily, he was the man who had chosen his empire over their marriage, leaving her with nothing but questions and regrets. This morning, Emily woke up with a heaviness in her chest. She moved slowly, almost mechanically, to the bathroom. The soft hum of the city outside reminded her that life went on, indifferent to her pain. Her hands trembled as she reached for the small white stick lying on the counter. She hadn't intended to use it yet, afraid of what the result might show. But some fears demand confrontation. 2 lines. Clear, undeniable, positive. Her breath caught. For a long moment, the room seemed to spin around her. Emily pressed a hand against her stomach, trying to process the impossible. She was divorced, alone, and now pregnant. Tears welled up in her eyes, not only from fear, but from the haunting realization of what this meant. A life growing inside her, a life she had not planned for, and certainly not with Daniel. She wrapped the test in tissue and hid it deep in the trash, as if burying it could erase the truth. But some secrets refused to stay hidden. Emily spent the morning in a daze. She went through her routine, showering, dressing, making coffee, but every action felt like moving underwater. Her mind was a storm of thoughts. What would she do? How could she face the truth? And most importantly, how would Daniel react if he ever found out? Memories of their marriage came flooding back. The nights they stayed up talking about their dreams. The trips they took, laughing like fools under the sun. The way he looked at her in those early days, like she was the only person in the world that mattered. And yet, it all ended in silence and legal papers. Hours passed, and Emily found herself wandering to the window. The city stretched out before her, bright and alive, indifferent to her turmoil. People were living, laughing, arguing, and going about their lives, while she was trapped in a moment that refused to move forward. Her phone buzzed. A message from a friend checking in. Emily typed a quick response, smiling faintly, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not until she figured out how to navigate this storm alone. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to her, Daniel Whitmore was already thinking about her. Not because he cared, necessarily, not anymore, but because a hidden instinct, a lingering sense of unfinished business, made him wonder, where is Emily Carter now? What's she been hiding? He had no idea how close he was to discovering the secret that would change everything. The pregnancy test, the symbol of a life neither of them had anticipated, would soon come into his hands. And when it did, the carefully built walls between them would start to crumble. Emily moved through the day, pretending to be normal. She made herself lunch, scrolled through emails, and even attempted to read a book. But every time she closed her eyes, she imagined Daniel's face, confused, angry, maybe even betrayed. Even as she tried to convince herself she could handle this. Alone, a part of her knew she couldn't. The secret was too big, too explosive, and too alive to remain hidden forever. As night fell, the apartment grew colder. The city lights shimmered through the windows, 1,000 lives continuing without pause. Emily lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling the tiny flutter in her stomach. A whisper of life, fragile but undeniable. And somewhere across town, Daniel Whitmore, in his high-rise office overlooking the skyline, would soon be faced with the truth he never expected. Because destiny has a way of revealing itself, even when we try hardest to hide it. The first time Daniel Whitmore thought about Emily since the divorce, it wasn't with anger. Not exactly. It was curiosity, a quiet, nagging thought he couldn't shake. He had thrown himself into work, into deals and boardrooms, trying to forget the life he left behind. But the truth is, some ghosts don't leave that easily. That evening, his personal assistant, Mark, handed him a small envelope marked urgent. Daniel barely looked at it before tucking it into his jacket pocket. But instinct made him glance again. Inside, a simple piece of paper peeked out, folded awkwardly. It wasn't unusual: emails, letters, legal notices, but something about the handwriting felt familiar. Curiosity pricked at him. He unfolded the paper, and then froze. There it was, a photograph of a small white pregnancy test, unmistakable, accompanied by a brief note. She thought she could hide it. She can't. Daniel's mind went blank. The apartment. The divorce papers. Emily. 1,000 thoughts collided in seconds. He sat down heavily in his leather chair, staring at the paper as if it could explain itself. How did she hide this? Why hadn't she told him? And most importantly, what did this mean for him now? Emily, meanwhile, had no idea her secret was about to be exposed. She spent the evening pacing her apartment, trying to convince herself that the world outside couldn't touch her. Every knock on the door, every notification on her phone made her jump. She was trapped in her own suspense, unaware that the storm was already on its way. Daniel didn't sleep that night. His mind replayed every memory with Emily. Every laugh, every argument, every tender moment he had tried to forget. And then he thought of the future. A child. His child. His eyes widened. Impossible. She wouldn't. But deep down, he knew the truth was already undeniable. By morning, Daniel had made a decision. He wouldn't act rashly. Not yet. But he needed answers. And that meant finding Emily. Emily woke up the next day, still clinging to denial. She told herself she could manage this alone, that Daniel would never find out, that the secret was hers and hers alone. But a message on her phone shattered that illusion. Emily, we need to talk. Now. No sender name. But she knew. Deep in her gut, she knew it was him. Her heart raced. Hands trembling, she stared at the message. Panic set in. The secret she had guarded so fiercely was no longer hers. It had been discovered. And just like that, the delicate balance of her carefully hidden life began to crumble. Daniel arrived at her apartment later that day. He didn't ring the bell. He didn't wait. He simply entered, unannounced. Emily froze. Words failed her. She tried to speak, but the sight of him, calm yet intense, stole her voice. He didn't yell. He didn't ask immediately. He simply held up the photograph of the test. It's true, isn't it? He said quietly, almost whispering. but the weight behind the words crushed her. Emily could only nod, tears brimming. She wanted to explain, to justify, but the words tangled in her throat. Daniel studied her, searching for any hint of deceit, any sign that she had been playing some game. But all he saw was fear, vulnerability, and something else. Something undeniable. A life growing inside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The air was thick, charged with emotion. Outside, the city continued its indifferent pace, unaware of the storm unfolding in a small apartment. Finally, Emily whispered, her voice trembling, "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how." Daniel remained silent, his mind racing. This revelation changed everything. Their past, their present, and, without a doubt, their future. The room held a fragile tension. One wrong word, one misstep, and everything could fall apart. But beneath that tension, a spark of something unspoken lingered, something neither could deny. Because even after divorce, even after secrets and betrayal, some connections refused to die. Emily's apartment felt smaller than ever. The walls, lined with memories and reminders of a life she thought she controlled, now seemed to close in on her. The secret she had guarded so fiercely had been discovered, and with Daniel standing mere feet away, reality hit harder than any fear she had ever known. Daniel Whitmore, for all his calculated calm, was struggling. His mind raced, leaping between disbelief, anger, concern, and a strange, unwelcome surge of emotion that neither of them could define. "Emily," he began, his voice low, steady, but laced with something deeper than words could capture. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't know how. I was scared, Daniel. Scared of losing you again. Scared of what you'd think. I thought I could handle it on my own." He studied her, the flicker of hurt in his eyes, almost hidden behind his controlled demeanor. "Handle it on your own?" he repeated. "Emily, this isn't just about you anymore. This is about a life that belongs to both of us, whether we like it or not." Her hand shook as she clutched her stomach. The tiny flutter inside reminded her that this was real. Too real to ignore. Too real to deny. For the first time, Daniel moved closer, not as the detached billionaire she had married, but as a man, complex, flawed, human, whose emotions could no longer be boxed behind wealth and power. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his eyes searching hers. Emily's lips trembled. "I don't know. I am scared. What if I can't do this? What if I fail?" Daniel's usual composure faltered. He wanted to reach out, to reassure her, but he knew words were not enough. Instead, he did something he hadn't done in years. He took her hand in his. The gesture was simple, yet it carried weight heavier than any contract or business deal he had ever signed. "I won't let you fail," he said, his voice firm, resolute. "We'll face this together, even if it's complicated, even if it's messy." "I'm not." Walking away this time, Emily. A silence fell over them, charged with unspoken tension. Outside, the city thrummed on, oblivious to the personal storm raging within a small apartment. Inside, two lives, bound by past love, present fear, and an uncertain future, stood at the precipice of a new reality. Emily felt a flicker of hope, fragile yet undeniable. She had expected confrontation, anger, maybe even resentment. But instead, she found understanding, tentative, cautious, but real. And yet, the storm was far from over. Secrets had a way of surfacing at the worst moments. The pregnancy was just the beginning. The test was only a symbol of deeper truths, the complicated history between them, the lingering feelings neither had fully confronted, and the challenges that awaited them in a world that had already written them off. Hours passed in quiet reflection. Daniel finally broke the silence. "We need a plan," he said, practical as ever, yet softened by the emotion he couldn't hide. "For the baby, for us, for everything. No more hiding, no more pretending." Emily nodded, overwhelmed. "I don't even know where to start." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "We start together, one step at a time. But know this, whatever comes, I'm not leaving." Her heart pounded with conflicting emotions. Fear, relief, love, and uncertainty all tangled together in a knot too complex to unravel. Yet, in that moment, amidst the chaos of secrets and storms, a fragile trust began to form, one that neither money nor pride could easily break. But outside the walls of their fragile sanctuary, the world was waiting. Because secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, have a way of finding the light. And when they do, the consequences are never small. The morning light filtered through the curtains, but Emily hardly noticed. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, questions, and fears. The secret that had once been hers alone was now shared, exposed to Daniel's scrutiny, and soon enough, to the unforgiving world beyond the apartment walls. Daniel had already left for work, his mind preoccupied with deals and decisions. But even in the high-rise towers of his empire, he couldn't stop thinking about Emily and the life growing inside her. Every boardroom meeting, every negotiation, every conference call was shadowed by a singular thought. How do we protect her? How do we protect the child? Meanwhile, Emily faced another reality. Her own circle of friends, neighbors, and colleagues were oblivious to the secret that could change everything. Every interaction felt like walking on a tightrope. Every casual smile, every passing conversation could reveal the truth she worked so hard to conceal. Hours later, a sudden knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts. She hesitated, her heart pounding. Emily wasn't expecting anyone. She cautiously opened the door. It was Sophie, her closest friend, holding a small envelope. I think you need to see this," Sophie said, her eyes filled with concern. Emily took the envelope, hands trembling. Inside were photographs, carefully staged, but unmistakably real, of her meeting Daniel the previous day, the test, and her apartment. Panic surged through her veins. "They're trying to expose me," Emily whispered, tears threatening to spill. Sophie shook her head. "Emily, you have to be careful. People will use this. You need to prepare before it's too late." Outside, the city continued, indifferent yet dangerous. Because in a world fueled by wealth, power, and secrets, exposure could ruin everything. Across town, Daniel's office was a storm of activity. Emails, calls, and financial updates filled his screens, but his attention was divided. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, someone waiting to exploit Emily's secret. Mark, his assistant, approached cautiously. "Sir, there's been chatter online. Rumors about Emily. People are starting to talk." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Rumors? Yes. About her, about you. About the child," Mark explained. Daniel felt a surge of anger mixed with protectiveness. This was no longer just a personal matter. It was a threat to everything they were building together. Emily, the baby, even their reputations. He stood abruptly, his mind racing. "I won't let this happen," he said, more to himself than to Mark. "Not to her. Not to the baby. Not to us." Meanwhile, Emily spent the day in a haze, torn between fear and the need for action. She couldn't hide forever. She couldn't keep running from the storm. Every message, every knock, every whisper of the world outside reminded her that the consequences of secrets were unavoidable. As night fell, she returned home to find Daniel waiting. His expression was a mixture of resolve and emotion, a combination Emily had come to recognize over their years together. "We need to face this," he said, his tone unwavering. "The world won't wait. Secrets have a way of escaping, and when they do, we have to be ready." Emily nodded, overwhelmed by the weight of truth. But in Daniel's gaze, she saw a strange reassurance, a promise that no matter how chaotic life became, she would not face it alone. Yet, just as they began to formulate a plan, a subtle knock echoed through the apartment. Both froze. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't casual. Someone was at the door. Someone who knew more than they should. Emily's breath caught. Daniel's hand instinctively went to hers. The storm, they realized, had only just begun. The night was thick with tension. Rain tapped rhythmically against the apartment windows, a subtle reminder that storms come in all forms, some outside, some within. Emily clutched Daniel's hand, her heart pounding. Whoever, or whatever, was at the door was about to shatter the fragile calm they had built. Daniel stepped forward, his presence commanding yet careful, shielding Emily as much as he could. "Stay behind me," he whispered, though there was a hint of uncertainty even in his own voice. A shadow appeared through the slightly cracked door. A figure stepped in, revealing a face Emily hadn't expected. It was Vanessa, Daniel's former business partner, and a woman with motives as sharp as her ambition. "I see the rumors weren't exaggerated," Vanessa said, her voice calm but laced with danger. "Pregnancy, divorce, secrets, people love drama, don't they?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "What do you want, Vanessa?" Vanessa smiled faintly, almost mockingly. "Oh, nothing for now. But the world loves truth, Daniel. And secrets like these? They don't stay hidden. Not for long." Emily felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. Vanessa's presence was more than intimidating. It was a warning. Every word she spoke was calculated to make them falter, to plant seeds of doubt and panic. Later, after Vanessa left, the apartment felt emptier than ever. Daniel and Emily sat together, both grappling with the reality of exposure. "I never imagined it would come to this," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought I could protect myself and the baby." Daniel took a deep breath. "We can handle this, Emily, but we need to be honest with each other and ourselves. The world won't wait for us to catch up. Secrets are dangerous, yes, but the truth can be our shield if we face it together." Emily nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words. The pregnancy was no longer just a personal secret. It was a force that could alter their lives forever. The following days were a whirlwind. Daniel began to investigate quietly, ensuring that Emily's privacy was protected while preparing for any potential exposure. Meanwhile, Emily dealt with her own fears and doubts, each day a balancing act between anticipation and anxiety. During this time, their relationship began to shift subtly. Old tensions faded slightly, replaced by a tentative understanding. They weren't back together. Not yet, but there was a bridge forming, built on trust, vulnerability, and the undeniable bond of a life growing within Emily. One evening, as they reviewed plans to safeguard Emily's secret and prepare for the future, Daniel paused. His eyes softened as he looked at her. "You're stronger than you think," he said, "and whatever comes, we'll face it together." Emily smiled faintly, hope and fear intertwining in her chest. For the first time since discovering the test, she felt a spark of control, not over the circumstances, but over how they would respond. Yet, as they looked out at the city skyline, a message flashed across Daniel's phone. It was anonymous, short, threatening. "The world knows. Secrets are fragile. They break." Emily gasped. Their reality, already precarious, was about to be tested in ways neither could imagine. The stakes were higher, the risks greater, and the storm had only just begun. The city was quiet, yet the tension in Emily's apartment was palpable. Days of fear, uncertainty, and secrecy had led to this moment, a confrontation that neither Emily nor Daniel could avoid any longer. Outside, the neon lights flickered against the rain-soaked streets, painting fleeting patterns on the walls, as if the world itself waited to witness what was about to unfold. Emily sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap, eyes distant. She had spent countless sleepless nights imagining every possible outcome: the scandal, the judgment, the heartbreak. And yet, amid the storm of fear, a flicker of courage had begun to grow. She wasn't going to hide anymore. Not from Daniel, not from the world, and not from herself. Daniel stood across from her, his expression unreadable at first. But beneath the cool, controlled exterior was a man deeply shaken by the revelations, yet fiercely protective of the woman he had once loved and the life growing inside her. "Emily," he began, his voice steady but heavy with emotion, "we can't avoid this any longer. The truth is out. People know, and no matter how we try to shield ourselves, it will find a way to affect us." Emily nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I know, and I've realized hiding doesn't protect anyone. Not me, not the baby, Not even you. Daniel took a step closer, his eyes searching hers, trying to read the storm of emotions she had carefully concealed. Then we face it, he said quietly. Together. The first test came sooner than they expected. A media outlet had somehow obtained a blurry photo of Emily leaving Daniel's building days earlier. Rumors started circulating online, speculation about the pregnancy, the divorce, and Daniel's reaction. Social media was alive with conjecture. Emily felt her chest tighten, but Daniel was calm, not detached but strategic. He had anticipated the leaks, prepared a statement that was honest but careful, and managed the press with the precision of a seasoned negotiator. "It's going to be okay," he reassured her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The truth is powerful if you don't let fear control it." Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. She realized that for the first time in weeks, she was no longer running. She was standing her ground. As the days passed, the emotional tension between Emily and Daniel transformed. Old wounds were acknowledged, apologies were shared, and moments of genuine connection resurfaced. One evening, as the rain poured outside, Daniel held Emily close. "I can't promise life will be easy," he said softly, "but I can promise that I won't walk away. Not now, not ever." Tears streamed down Emily's face, but this time they were not only of fear. They were tears of hope, gratitude, and an emerging love that refused to be buried under past mistakes. "I never thought we'd get here," Emily whispered. "After everything, I didn't think we'd have a chance." Daniel kissed her forehead gently. "Life gives second chances in ways we least expect. This is ours. We just have to embrace it." Weeks turned into months. The pregnancy progressed, and Daniel became a constant presence, not as a distant billionaire, but as a partner, protector, and eventually a father-to-be who was learning to balance love, responsibility, and the weight of the world's eyes on them. Emily, once afraid and secretive, now moved with confidence. She shared her story selectively with friends and supporters, creating a small circle of trust. The bond between her and Daniel deepened, grounded in honesty, vulnerability, and the shared commitment to the life they were about to welcome into the world. Then, one quiet evening, as the sun set over the skyline, Emily felt the baby kick. The gentle movement, small yet undeniable, reminded her of the miracle of life, hope, and new beginnings. Daniel was there, holding her hand, his eyes glistening with unspoken emotion. "This is real," he whispered, voice breaking. "We made it real." Emily smiled through tears. "Yes, real and ours." They stood together, facing the city, facing the challenges, and most importantly, facing the future with courage. The storm of secrets, fear, and uncertainty had passed. In its place stood truth, love, and new beginnings.